The dust swirled across the parking lot of Four Corners Trading Post, catching the late afternoon sun in a golden haze. Emma Reynolds clutched her 3-week-old son closer to her chest, her fingers trembling against the thin blanket. The bus that had dropped them off was already disappearing down the highway, its exhaust mingling with the desert dust. She stood alone, a single duffel bag at her feet, containing everything she now owned in the world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "He'll be here," she whispered to Noah, whose tiny face was scrunched against the brightness. "Your father promised he'd meet us here." Her voice caught on the word father. Jack had been so insistent that she come, that they could start fresh, in Arizona, where his cousin had promised him work, where they could be a family, away from the disappointment in her parents' eyes when they learned their 22-year-old daughter was pregnant with no wedding ring in sight. Emma adjusted the baby sling and picked up her bag, walking toward the trading post's entrance. The wooden sign above the door swayed slightly in the wind. Four Corners Trading Post since 1954. Inside, the air smelled of leather, pine, and coffee. Handcrafted jewelry glinted under glass counters, and woven rugs in vibrant patterns hung from the walls. An elderly man with weathered skin looked up from behind the counter. "Help you, miss?" "I'm waiting for someone," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Is it all right if I sit for a while?" The man, his name tag read Roy, nodded toward a wooden bench near the window. "Take your time. Beautiful baby." Emma smiled weakly and settled onto the bench. Noah had fallen asleep, his breath warm against her collarbone. She checked her watch, 5:47 p.m. Jack had said he'd be here by 5. She rummaged through her bag for her phone, but the battery was dead. Another casualty of the 36-hour journey from Ohio. "Excuse me," she called to Roy. "Do you have a phone I could use?" He gestured to an old payphone near the restrooms. Emma dug out the crumpled paper with Jack's number, fed quarters into the slot, and dialed. It rang 6 times before rolling to voicemail. "It's me," she said after the beep. "We're at the trading post. Please come soon. Noah's getting hungry and—" She didn't finish the sentence. What was there to say? That she was scared? That she was beginning to feel the first tendrils of doubt creeping into her certainty? Hours passed. The trading post was preparing to close. Roy had made her a cup of tea and offered a folding chair behind the counter where she could sit more comfortably. Noah had cycled through feeding, crying, and sleeping twice. Outside, the desert sunset had faded to a deep blue, and the temperature was dropping rapidly. "Miss," Roy said gently, "we close at 9. Is there somewhere I can call for you? Someone who can come get you?" Emma stared at him, the reality of her situation suddenly crushing down on her. She had no one. Her parents had made it clear she wasn't welcome back unless she fixed her mistake. Her friends had slowly drifted away during her pregnancy, and now it seemed Jack wasn't coming either. I don't have anyone," she admitted, her voice small. Roy's face creased with concern. He was about to speak when the bell above the door jangled. Emma's heart leapt, but instead of Jack, a middle-aged Navajo woman entered, wrapped in a colorful shawl. "Nina," Roy greeted her. "Just closing up." The woman nodded, then noticed Emma and the baby. Her eyes, dark and knowing, took in the duffel bag, Emma's exhausted posture, and the sleeping infant. "You've been here all day," she stated, not a question. Emma nodded, too tired to explain or pretend. Nina turned to Roy, speaking in rapid Navajo. He responded in kind, glancing at Emma occasionally. Emma didn't need to understand the words to know they were discussing her predicament. Finally, Nina approached her. "I'm Nina Begay. My family lives 5 miles from here. We have a spare room, and it's too late for you and your little one to be out here alone." Emma hesitated. She'd depleted most of her savings on the bus ticket. If she left, how would Jack find her? But the alternative, spending the night outside the trading post with Noah in the desert cold, was unthinkable. "Jack might still come," she said weakly. Nina's eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. "If he comes, Roy will tell him where to find you. But tonight, you and your baby need a warm place to sleep." Emma looked down at Noah, his tiny fingers curled against the blanket. What choice did she have? "Thank you," she whispered, gathering her bag. Outside, Nina led her to an old blue pickup truck, its bed filled with bags of feed and what looked like crafting supplies. The inside smelled of sage and wool. As they drove away from the trading post, Emma stared out the window at the vast darkness, broken only by distant pinpricks of light from scattered homes. She wondered if somewhere in that darkness Jack was looking for her, or if, as a growing voice inside her feared, he had never intended to come at all. The Begay home appeared first as a collection of warm lights against the night sky, growing into the shape of a modest single-story house as they approached. Two other smaller structures, a traditional hogan and what looked like a workshop, stood nearby. A dog barked as Nina's truck crunched over the gravel driveway. "That's just Toba," Nina said, noticing Emma's startled expression. "He sounds fierce, but he's gentle around children." The front door opened before they had fully stopped, spilling golden light onto the packed earth of the yard. A man stood in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered with silver threading through his black hair. "Key," Nina called as she helped Emma out of the truck. "We have guests tonight." Key Begay's expression remained neutral as his wife explained the situation in low tones. His eyes, however, were kind when they settled on Emma and the bundle in her arms. "Come inside," he said simply. "It's getting cold." The house was warm and smelled of fresh bread and something savory. Emma followed Nina through a living room decorated with a mixture of traditional Navajo textiles and family photographs. A teenage girl looked up from a textbook at the kitchen table, her curiosity evident as Nina made introductions. "This is our daughter Lily. Our son Daniel is out with the sheep tonight, and that's Shima Sani, my mother-in-law Elsie." An elderly woman sat in a rocking chair near the wood stove, her fingers working deftly at a small loom. She nodded at Emma but didn't pause in her weaving. "Please sit," Nina gestured to the table. "When did you last eat?" Emma couldn't remember. The day had blurred into an endless cycle of anxiety and disappointment. "This morning, maybe?" Lily was already setting another place at the table while Nina ladled stew into a bowl. The warmth of the house, the simple kindness of food offered without question, made Emma's throat tighten. Noah stirred against her chest, making small, hungry sounds. "You need to feed him," Nina observed. "Lily, show her to the back room where she can have some privacy." The girl led Emma down a short hallway to a small bedroom with a neatly made twin bed. "The bathroom is right across the hall if you need it," Lily said. "I'll bring your food in here." Left alone, Emma sank onto the bed and unwrapped Noah from his blanket. His face was flushed, his tiny fists waving in hunger. As she fed him, tears she'd been holding back all day finally spilled over. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her son. "I thought he'd be there. I really thought he meant it this time." Noah's eyes, dark blue and solemn, gazed up at her. His complete dependence, his absolute trust in her to protect him, made her heart ache. What had she done, bringing him to this remote place on nothing but Jack's hollow promises? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Lily entered with a tray, holding a bowl of stew, fresh bread, and a glass of water. She set it on the small dresser, without comment, but hesitated at the door. "My brother was born when I was 8, she said suddenly. "I remember how tired my mother was, but you're doing it alone." There was no pity in her voice, just a quiet observation. "Thank you for the food," Emma said, not knowing how else to respond. Lily nodded and left, closing the door softly behind her. After Noah had fallen asleep, Emma laid him carefully on the bed, surrounding him with pillows so he couldn't roll. She ate the stew, a rich mixture of vegetables and tender meat that warmed her from the inside, and tried to think clearly about her situation. Her phone was still dead. She had less than $300 left. The nearest town of any size was Cedar Ridge, at least 30 miles away. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. And Jack wasn't coming. The truth settled over her like a heavy blanket. Perhaps she'd always known, from the moment he'd suggested she come to Arizona instead of him returning to Ohio, from the way his calls had grown shorter and less frequent during her pregnancy, from how easily he'd dismissed her concerns about traveling so far with a newborn. A knock on the door pulled her from these thoughts. Nina entered, carrying a small bassinet. "This was Daniel's," she explained, setting it beside the bed. "It's safer for the baby than sleeping with you." Emma transferred Noah to the bassinet, tucking his blanket around him. "Thank you for everything. I don't know what we would have done tonight if—" "You don't need to thank us," Nina interrupted gently, "or explain anything. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow is time enough for decisions." But Emma felt she owed this woman some explanation. "His name is Jack, Noah's father. He promised to meet us, to have a place ready. We were going to be a family." Nina's face remained carefully neutral. "Men make many promises. Some they keep, some they don't." "I was so sure he meant it this time," Emma whispered. Nina sat on the edge of the bed. "When I was younger than you, I fell in love with a man from another clan. He promised we would marry, despite our family's objections. I waited at the ceremonial grounds for 3 days." She smiled faintly at the memory. "He never came." "What did you do?" "I cried, I raged, then I went home and learned to weave from my grandmother. Later I met Key, who never promised what he couldn't give." Nina stood. "Sleep now, the baby will wake you soon enough." After Nina left, Emma lay in the darkness, listening to Noah's soft breathing. Outside, the wind whispered through juniper. Trees, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to the moon. It was nothing like the Ohio suburbs where she'd grown up. This land felt ancient and vast, indifferent to human sorrows. Yet, inside this house, she'd found unexpected kindness. Not the future she'd imagined, but shelter for the night. It would have to be enough. Morning arrived with the scent of coffee and the low murmur of voices. Emma had been up twice with Noah during the night, but still managed to dress and compose herself before venturing out to the kitchen. The family was already gathered around. The table, joined now by a young man who must be Daniel, based on his resemblance to Key. "Good morning," Nina greeted her. "Coffee?" Emma nodded gratefully, settling into an offered chair with Noah cradled in one arm. Daniel gave her a polite nod before returning to his breakfast. Lily was more openly curious, watching her feed Noah a bottle of formula. "How old is he?" the girl asked. 3 weeks yesterday," Emma replied. "So tiny," Lily marveled. "Can I hold him later?" Before Emma could answer, a truck rumbled into the driveway. Everyone at the table stilled, and she felt a sudden surge of hope. Had Jack somehow found her? Key rose and went to the window. "It's Roy from the trading post," he said. Emma's heart sank as quickly as it had risen. Roy entered after a brief, a knock, removing his hat as he stepped inside. His eyes found Emma immediately. "Miss Reynolds," he said gravely, "I think you should know. A man came by the trading post this morning asking about a young woman and a baby." "Jack?" Emma stood quickly, jostling Noah, who began to fuss. "Was it Jack Mercer?" Roy nodded slowly. "He claimed that name, said there had been a misunderstanding about meeting times." A wave of relief washed over Emma. There had been a mistake after all. Jack hadn't abandoned them. He'd just gotten the day wrong or been delayed. "Where is he? Is he coming here?" Roy exchanged a glance with Key. "That's the thing, miss. When I told him you were staying with the Bigays, he seemed unsettled. Asked how far it was to Phoenix instead. Then he got a call and stepped outside. By the time I went to check, he'd driven off." Emma stared at him, trying to process his words. "He left again?" "I'm sorry," Roy said, genuine regret in his voice. "Before he went, he left something on the counter." He held out a small envelope. With trembling fingers, Emma took it. Inside was $500 in cash and a hastily scrawled note. This isn't working. I'm not ready. Better this way. Jay." The room spun slightly. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself, aware of the silent witnesses to her humiliation. $500. That's what Jack had decided Noah was worth. That's what she was worth. "I need some air," she managed to say, handing Noah to a startled Lily before stumbling out the front door. Outside, the morning sun was blinding. Emma made it to the corner of the house before her legs gave way, and she sank to the ground, her back against the rough stucco wall. The envelope crumpled in her fist as sobs tore through her body, violent, gasping cries that seemed to come from somewhere deep and primal. She didn't know how long she sat there, but eventually the storm of emotions subsided, leaving her hollow and spent. The sound of soft footsteps approached, but she didn't look up. "When my husband died," a cracked voice said in accented English, "I thought the sky had fallen. I could not breathe for the weight of it." Emma raised her head to see Grandmother Elsie standing before her, leaning on a gnarled walking stick. The old woman lowered herself carefully to sit beside Emma on the ground. "I cried until I was empty," Elsie continued. "Then I looked at my children and remembered that the sky remains, even when we cannot see it." Emma wiped her face with her sleeve. "I've been so stupid. I knew what Jack was like. I just wanted so badly to believe him this time." Elsie made a dismissive gesture. "Stupid is the man who abandons his child. You carried this baby across many miles to find him a father. That is not stupid. That is courage." "Courage?" Emma gave a bitter laugh. "I have nowhere to go. No job, no home. What kind of mother does that make me?" "A mother who tries," Elsie said simply. "Like all mothers since the beginning of time." She tapped her walking stick against the ground. "For emphasis. Now, the question is not what kind of mother you were yesterday, but what kind you will be today." From inside the house came the sound of Noah crying, a thin, urgent wail that pierced Emma's heart. She stood quickly, helping Elsie to her feet. "As well." "Thank you," she said, though it seemed inadequate. Elsie patted her arm. "Go to your son. He is the sky that remains." Inside, Lily was attempting to soothe Noah without success. She looked relieved when Emma took him back, his cries immediately softening as he recognized his mother's scent and warmth. "I'm sorry," Emma said to the family, who had witnessed her breakdown. "I didn't mean to." Key raised a hand, stopping her apology. "No need for that here. Roy has gone, but he said the trading post is looking for help. Summer tourists are coming soon." Nina nodded. "It's not much, but it would be a start. There's the small cabin behind our house. It was for Daniel until he decided to stay in the main house to help his father. You and Noah could stay there while you decide what's next." Emma looked at them in disbelief. "You barely know me. Why would you do this?" Key and Nina exchanged glances. It was Elsie who answered. "Long ago, my grandfather was traveling far from home when sickness took him. Strangers gave him shelter, nursed him back to health. Without them, none of us would be here." She fixed Emma with her dark eyes. "We do not forget such things." "Take some time," Nina added. "Think about what you want. No one will rush you." Emma looked down at Noah, now contentedly nestled against her chest. His father had abandoned him, left him with nothing but $500 and a hastily scribbled note. But here, among strangers, he had found something Jack couldn't provide, people who understood that a child's worth couldn't be measured in dollars, that a mother's determination was a strength, not a burden. "I'd like to try," she said finally, "if the trading post will have me." Nina smiled, the first full smile Emma had seen from her. "Good. Lily can watch the baby when you work. She needs the practice for when she has her own someday." Lily rolled her eyes but looked pleased at the prospect. Later that afternoon, Daniel and Key helped Emma move her meager belongings to the small cabin behind the main house. It was simple. One room with a small kitchenette, a bed and a bathroom, but clean and snug. Someone, probably Nina, had already placed the bassinet beside the bed and set a vase of desert wildflowers on the small table. As Emma settled Noah into his new surroundings, she thought about Jack driving away from the trading post, choosing freedom over responsibility. She thought about the $500 now tucked into her bag, money that couldn't buy what Noah truly needed. And she thought about the Begay family, who had offered shelter not from obligation, but from an understanding that sometimes the strongest people are those at their most vulnerable. Outside the window, the vast landscape stretched toward distant mesas. This wasn't the life she had planned. This wasn't the ending she had imagined to her journey. But as the sun began to set, painting the desert in shades of fire and gold, Emma realized it might not be an ending at all, but a beginning. Noah cooed softly in his bassinet, reaching toward her with tiny fingers. Emma leaned down and kissed his forehead, breathing in his perfect newborn scent. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. And for the first time since stepping off that bus, she believed it might be true. The small cabin became a sanctuary in the following days. Emma established a routine of feeding Noah at dawn, walking the short path to the main house where Nina had coffee waiting, and then heading to the trading post with Roy for her training. The work wasn't difficult. Restocking shelves, running the register, helping tourists select authentic native crafts, but it gave structure to days that might otherwise have collapsed into grief. Roy proved to be a patient teacher. "The trading post has been here for 3 generations, he explained as they opened one morning. "Started as a real trading outpost when this road was just dirt and hope. Now we get tourists heading to Monument Valley, locals needing supplies, and artists selling their work." Emma arranged a display of silver and turquoise jewelry, handling each piece with care. "It's beautiful," she said, admiring a pendant shaped like a bear. "Navajo craftsmanship," Roy nodded. "The bear symbolizes strength and introspection. Some believe it has healing powers." "I could use some of that," Emma murmured, not intending Roy to hear. "Couldn't we all?" he replied with a gentle smile. "The pay's not much, but you'll get commission on sales. Most of our summer visitors are generous, especially with a pretty young face behind the counter." Emma flushed. "I haven't felt pretty in a long time." Roy's weathered face softened. "Motherhood has its own beauty. Give yourself time." Time was something Emma had in abundance now. Time to think about the future, time to marvel at Noah's changing expressions, time to absorb the landscape that had initially seemed so alien, but was slowly revealing its fierce beauty. Each evening, she'd sit on the small porch of the cabin, watching the sun transform the desert into a canvas of impossible colors, and feel something inside her gradually unlock. Lily proved to be an eager babysitter, arriving each morning to watch Noah while Emma worked. The teenager had a natural way with the baby, singing to him in Navajo and English, carrying him in a traditional cradle board Nina had retrieved from storage. "He likes the stories," Lily said one evening when Emma returned to find them on the porch, Noah watching the girl's animated face with solemn attention. "I've been telling him about Coyote and how he brought fire to the people." Emma sat beside them, grateful for the cool evening breeze after the stuffiness of the trading post. "My mother used to tell me fairy tales, Cinderella, Snow White, princesses waiting to be rescued." Lily wrinkled her nose. "Our stories aren't like that. The women in them are smart and brave, like Spider-Woman, who taught the Navajo to weave, or Changing Woman, who created the 4 original clans." "I'd like to hear those stories," Emma said, accepting Noah as Lily carefully transferred him to her arms. "Shimasani tells them best," Lily said. "She's invited you to join us for dinner tonight. She's making kneel-down bread. It's traditional." The main house glowed with warmth as Emma approached, carrying Noah wrapped in a light blanket against the evening chill. Inside, the family moved. In harmonious chaos, Daniel setting the table, Nina stirring something fragrant on the stove, Key slicing fresh bread. Grandmother Elsie sat in her usual place by the wood stove, but tonight her loom was set aside. "Emma," Nina greeted her. "Come sit, food is almost ready." Dinner was a symphony of flavors: tender mutton stew, cornbread steamed in husks, fresh greens from Nina's garden. Emma ate gratefully, realizing how long it had been since she'd shared a proper family meal. At home, dinners had become tense, affairs after her parents learned of her pregnancy, filled with pointed silences and barely concealed disappointment. Here, conversation flowed easily around her. Daniel spoke of the sheep. A coyote had been spotted near the eastern pasture. Lily complained about her algebra teacher. Key discussed plans to repair the roof before the summer rains. They included Emma naturally, without making her feel like an obligation or intruder. After dinner, as Emma helped clear the table, Elsie beckoned her to the living room. The old woman had settled in her rocking chair, a leather-bound book in her lap. "Sit," she commanded, patting the space on the couch beside her. "Lily says you want to hear our stories." Emma sat, arranging Noah on her lap so he could see Elsie's face. The baby's eyes, growing more alert each day, fixed on the elder with curious intensity. "This one," Elsie said, looking at Noah. "He listens with his spirit. That is good." She opened the book, revealing pages covered in beautiful illustrations and handwritten text. "My mother made this book. Her mother told her the stories as her mother told her. Now I tell you." For the next hour, Emma sat entranced as Elsie recounted tales of creation and transformation, of animals that spoke and mountains that breathed, of women who became stars and men who challenged the sun. The stories weren't simple morality tales, like the ones Emma had grown up with. They were complex, sometimes contradictory, full of beauty and terror in equal measure. "In the beginning," Elsie said, her voice dropping to a reverent hush, "there was darkness. Then first man and first woman emerged into the light. They had journeyed through 4 worlds before this one, learning wisdom with each passage." Emma thought of her own journey, from the sheltered suburbs of Ohio to this desert outpost, carrying Noah through her own kind of darkness toward an uncertain light. "The 4th world is where we live now," Elsie continued. "It is imperfect. There is suffering here, but there is also beauty and balance for those who seek it." As Elsie spoke, the others moved quietly around them. Nina weaving at a small loom, Key carving a piece of juniper wood, Daniel and Lily playing a card game at the table. It struck Emma how different this was from her own family's evenings, everyone retreating to separate rooms with separate screens. "The stories remind us," Elsie said, closing the book as she finished, "that we belong to the land and to each other, even when we feel lost." Emma looked down at Noah, now sleeping peacefully in her arms. "I've felt lost for a long time," she admitted, "even before I came here." Elsie nodded sagely. "The mother of my mother's mother was found as a child after a raid. No family left. My people took her in, gave her a new name, a new clan. She became Navajo in her heart, though her blood was different." The old woman touched Noah's cheek gently. Sometimes the path finds us when we are not looking. That night, back in her cabin, Emma couldn't sleep. Elsie's stories tumbled through her mind, interwoven with her own story, the leaving, the abandonment, the unexpected shelter. She thought of the book Elsie had shown her, preserving generations of wisdom, connecting past to future through carefully inked words and images. On impulse, she took out the small journal she'd packed, one of the few non-essential items she'd allowed herself when leaving Ohio. Opening to a fresh page, she began to write, not about Jack or her disappointments, but about this place and these people who had taken her in, about the quality of desert light at dawn, the smell of sage after rain, the weight of Noah in her arms. Words flowed from her pen, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. She wrote until her hand cramped, and Noah's hungry cries pulled her back to the present. As she fed him in the pre-dawn dimness, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in months, the quiet satisfaction of creation. The days settled into a rhythm. Each morning, Emma rose with the sun and took Noah for a walk before the day's heat built. The desert, which had first appeared barren and forbidding, revealed its secret life to her observant eyes. Lizards sunning on rocks, rabbits darting through scrub, wildflowers erupting in improbable bursts of color after a rare spring. Shower. At the trading post, she gradually mastered the rhythm of commerce, learning to banter with tourists, negotiate with artists bringing their work to sell, assist locals looking for specific supplies. Roy taught her how to evaluate the quality of silverwork, the tightness of basket weaving, the naturalness of dyes used in rugs. "You've got a good eye," he said, after she correctly identified a piece of jewelry as machine-made rather than handcrafted. "Not everyone can tell the difference." "I'm learning," Emma replied, surprised by the pride in her voice. One afternoon in her third week of work, a Navajo woman about Emma's age entered the store with a portfolio of watercolor paintings. Roy was out on an errand, leaving Emma to handle the transaction alone. "I'm Faye Tsosi," the woman introduced herself. "I usually bring my work to Roy at the beginning of tourist season." Emma opened the portfolio, gasping softly at the paintings inside. They depicted the reservation landscape in luminous washes of color, mesas glowing at sunset, storm clouds gathering over distant mountains, ancient petroglyphs etched into red rock faces. "These are extraordinary," Emma said, turning each page. With care. Faye looked pleased, but not surprised by the praise. "My grandmother taught me to see the light behind the light. That's what I tried to capture." "The light behind the light," Emma repeated. "I think I'm starting to understand what that means." They negotiated a fair price for the trading post to sell the paintings, and as Faye gathered her portfolio to leave, she hesitated. "Nina Begay says you're staying in their guest cabin," she said, "with a baby." Emma nodded, immediately wary. Had her story become reservation gossip? But Faye simply smiled. "I teach art classes at the community center in Cedar Ridge on Saturdays. You should come sometime. Bring the little one. There's always someone happy to hold a baby while mothers have a moment to themselves." The invitation, casual but genuine, caught Emma off guard. "Thank you," she managed. "I might do that." Later, she mentioned the encounter to Nina as they prepared dinner together in the main house, a new routine that had developed naturally over the past weeks. "Faye Tsosi is a good person," Nina said, slicing carrots with practiced efficiency. "Her work sells in galleries as far away as Santa Fe. She came back to the reservation to care for her grandmother and stayed to teach the children. She invited me to her art class," Emma said, stirring the pot of beans simmering on the stove. Nina glanced at her with one of her inscrutable looks. "You should go. You've been here almost a month and haven't left the trading post except to and come home." Emma hadn't realized Nina had noticed this. "I'm saving money," she said defensively. Gas isn't cheap, and Noah needs things. Yes, Nina agreed mildly. But you need things too. The words lingered with Emma through the evening and into the next day. What did she need beyond the basics of survival? For so long, her focus had narrowed to getting through each day. First during her difficult pregnancy, then during the journey west, and now in establishing this tentative new life. The question was still on her mind when she returned to the cabin that evening to find Key repairing a leak in her roof, his tall frame balanced confidently on a ladder. There was a spot, he explained as he climbed down. Better to fix it now before the summer storms. Thank you, Emma said, suddenly overwhelmed by this simple act of care. For everything. I don't know how I'll ever repay you all. Key studied her thoughtfully. Do you know the story of the cornfields? Emma shook her head. Long ago, when the Dine first learned to farm, they planted corn in straight, even rows as they had been taught. But the winds came and leveled the young plants. They replanted, and again the winds destroyed their work. Key gestured toward the scattered juniper trees surrounding the property. Then they watched how plants grow naturally, in clusters, supporting each other against the wind. So they began to plant in small groups, and the corn thrived. He placed his tools in an old leather bag. We are not meant to stand alone, Emma Reynolds. Not you, not me, not anyone. There is no debt between the corn plants. That Saturday, Emma accepted Faye's invitation. She packed Noah's diaper bag, strapped him into the car seat Lily had found at a church donation center, and drove Nina's truck the 30 miles to Cedar Ridge. The community center was a simple building near the town's small park. Inside, a dozen or so people of various ages arranged themselves around tables covered in art supplies. Faye greeted Emma warmly, immediately introducing her to the others, mostly women, a few men, ranging from teenagers to elders. An older woman named Martha instantly claimed Noah, settling into a corner chair with practiced ease. 5 grandchildren, she explained, cradling him expertly. Go make your art. He'll be fine. Feeling both liberated and anxious, Emma took a seat at an empty table. Faye was demonstrating a technique for capturing the translucent quality of canyon walls in watercolor, layering washes of sienna, ochre, and rose. Emma picked up a brush hesitantly. It had been years since high school art class, and she'd never been particularly talented. Don't think about making something good, Faye advised, noticing her hesitation. Just make something true. Something true. Emma dipped her brush in water, then paint, and made the first tentative stroke across the paper. The color bloomed, spreading in unpredictable patterns. She added another color, then another, not trying to control the outcome, but allowing the medium its own voice. Time slipped away as she worked. Occasionally she glanced up to check on Noah, but he was contentedly being passed between willing arms, a community of grandmothers and aunties keeping him entertained. Emma felt a knot of tension she hadn't realized she was carrying begin to unravel. By the end of the class, she had created something that wasn't quite a landscape, wasn't quite an abstract. A fusion of emotion and observation that surprised her with its intensity. First time is always the most honest, Faye said, examining Emma's work. Before we learn all the rules, we think we need to follow. Emma stared at the painting, seeing in its swirls and saturations something of her own internal landscape, the darkness she'd carried, but also unexpected pools of light. I didn't know I had this in me, she admitted. Faye smiled. Most of us don't, until we give ourselves permission to find out. As the class dispersed, several women invited Emma to join them for lunch at the town's only cafe. She accepted, balancing Noah on her hip as they walked the short distance down Main Street. The normalcy of it, women chatting, laughing, sharing a meal, felt both foreign and familiar, like a language she'd once known and was remembering phrase by phrase. Over sandwiches and iced tea, Emma learned about her companions' lives. Martha was a retired schoolteacher. Teresa ran the local hair salon. Delia worked at the tribal administrative office. They spoke of everyday concerns, children's achievements, health challenges, community projects, including Emma in the conversation as if she'd always been part of their circle. "How are you finding life at the Big Haze?" Teresa asked, bouncing Noah on her knee while Emma ate. "They're good people. Key's family has been on that land for generations." "They've been incredibly kind," Emma said. "I don't know what we would have done without them." "Nina mentioned you're working at the trading post now," Delia added. "Roy's been trying to find reliable help for years." Emma nodded. "It's not what I imagined doing, but I'm grateful for the work." "What did you imagine?" Martha asked, her direct gaze reminding Emma of grandmother Elsie. The question caught her off guard. What had she imagined for herself before Jack, before the pregnancy, before all the compromises and accommodations? "I was studying nursing," she said finally. "Just the beginning courses at community college. I always thought I'd work in healthcare somehow." "Oh, the clinic here is always short-staffed," Teresa remarked, "especially in summer when the tourists flood in with their heat exhaustion and hiking injuries." "I'd need to finish my degree," Emma said, the idea simultaneously appealing and overwhelming. "And there's Noah to think about." "Children are raised by communities," Martha said firmly. "Always have been. Don't let that be what holds you back." Emma considered this as they finished their meal. The concept of community childcare wasn't entirely foreign. Her own mother had relied on a network of neighborhood women when Emma and her brother were young. But that network had been built over years through church connections and shared histories. What Martha suggested seemed both more deliberate and more organic. As she drove back to the Begay home that afternoon, Noah sleeping peacefully in his car seat, Emma's mind buzzed with new possibilities. The landscape rolled past the windows, mesas and buttes standing like sentinels against the endless sky, juniper and pinon forest giving way to open desert, then back to scattered vegetation. The vastness of it no longer felt threatening, but expanding, full of potential. Back at the cabin, she found Daniel repairing the fence of the small garden plot behind her dwelling. He nodded a greeting, but didn't interrupt his work. Emma had come to appreciate his quiet nature. Unlike his sister's bubbling curiosity, Daniel's presence was steady, undemanding. "Nina thought you might want to plant something," he said as he hammered the last post into place. "The soil's good here. We bring water from the well." Emma surveyed the plot, perhaps 10 feet square, freshly turned earth rich and dark against the surrounding dust. "I've never had a garden," she admitted. Daniel shrugged. "Not hard. Plants want to grow. You just help them along." He pointed to a box on the porch. "Seeds there. Grandmother said to let you choose what speaks to you." After he left, Emma opened the box to find dozens of small packets labeled in Elsie's careful handwriting. Corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, peppers, herbs of various kinds. She sat on the porch step, Noah gurgling beside her in his bassinet, and sorted through them, considering what might thrive in this alien soil, what might feed her and her son in the months to come. The simple act of planning a garden felt audacious, a commitment to staying, to putting down roots, literal and figurative. Was that what she wanted? What options did she really have? She could return to Ohio, face her parents' judgment, start over in familiar but unwelcoming territory. She could take her trading post earnings and Noah's abandonment money and try. Another city, Phoenix maybe, or Albuquerque, places with more opportunities but no established connections. Or she could stay here, in this in-between place where she had somehow found not just shelter but acceptance, where the Begay family had made space for her and Noah without demanding explanations or extracting promises, where the desert, harsh but honest, was teaching her daily lessons about resilience and beauty in unlikely places. Emma selected several seed packets and set them aside. Tomatoes, zucchini, bell peppers, sweet corn. Tomorrow, she decided, she would plant them, not because she was certain of staying, but because growth required faith in the future, and faith was something she was learning to cultivate alongside whatever vegetables might eventually emerge from the desert soil. That evening, as she rocked Noah to sleep, a soft knock came at her door. She opened it to find Nina holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "May I come in?" the older woman asked. Emma stepped aside, welcoming her into the cabin's single room, now personalized with Emma's few possessions and signs of Noah's presence. A handmade mobile Daniel had crafted hanging above the bassinet, a colorful blanket Lily had brought from the main house, the watercolor from the art class pinned to the wall. Nina sat at the small table, unwrapping her bundle to reveal a folded garment of soft, cream-colored leather. "I saw you chose seeds," she said, smoothing the leather with work-worn hands. "It's good to plant when you're unsure. Helps to see things growing." Emma settled in the chair opposite, curious about the strange garment. "Daniel said the soil is good here." Nina nodded. "This land has been in Key's family for generations. His grandfather built the Hogan out back when he married. His father built the main house when the children came. Land remembers the hands that tend it." She unfolded the leather, revealing what Emma now recognized as a baby carrier. Similar to the cradle board Lily used, but less structured, more like a complex wrap with intricate beadwork along the edges. "This was made for my first child," Nina said, running her fingers over the beading. "Now I think Noah might use it. It will free your hands for gardening." Emma touched the soft leather reverently. "It's beautiful. But shouldn't it stay in your family for grandchildren? A child who sleeps beneath our roof is family," Nina said simply, "the way we see it." The words settled in the quiet cabin like seeds themselves, taking root in fertile soil. Emma thought of all she had lost, her parents' approval, Jack's promises, her own carefully constructed plans for the future. Yet here, in this remote corner of the reservation, she had found something she hadn't known to look for. Not just help or charity, but a sense of belonging, based not on blood or obligation, but on the daily choice to care for one another. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything." Nina stood, placing the baby carrier on the table between them like an offering. "Tomorrow I'll show you how to use it properly. It takes practice." After Nina left, Emma sat for a long time in the growing darkness, listening to Noah's steady breathing and the distant call of coyotes welcoming the night. Outside her window, the stars emerged one by one, brilliant against the vast darkness of the desert sky. She thought of Elsie's stories, of first man and first woman navigating unknown worlds, of Spider-Woman teaching humans to weave beauty from raw materials, of changing woman bringing forth the first clans from her own body. She had come west, seeking a man who hadn't wanted her, carrying a child into an uncertain future. Instead, she had found a different kind of family, shaped not by legal documents or shared DNA, but by the simple, profound act of making space for one another in a harsh and beautiful world. Emma picked up her journal and began to write, capturing this moment of clarity before it could slip away. She wrote of seeds and soil, of leather baby carriers and watercolor sunsets, of a family that defined itself through actions rather than blood. She wrote until the words blurred with exhaustion, until Noah stirred for his midnight feeding, until the desert night wrapped around the small cabin like a protective cloak, holding mother and child safe in its embrace. Summer descended on the reservation with fierce intensity. By mid-June, temperatures regularly climbed above 100 degrees, the air shimmering with heat by mid-morning. Emma adapted her routine, rising earlier to tend her garden before the sun grew too punishing. wearing the loose cotton dresses Nina had helped her sew, keeping Noah in the shade and frequently dabbing his skin with cool water. The trading post transformed with the season. Tourists arrived in steady streams, families on road trips, photographers chasing the perfect desert light, European travelers fascinated by Native American culture. Emma learned to answer their questions patiently, to recommend authentic crafts rather than mass-produced imitations, to share tidbits of knowledge gleaned from the big gaze without overstepping into speaking for a culture that wasn't her own. "You're good with the customers," Roy observed one particularly busy afternoon as Emma wrapped a hand-woven basket for an elderly couple from Minnesota. Honest without being pushy, people respond to that. Emma smiled, accepting the compliment with newfound grace. "I enjoy the stories behind the pieces. It makes them more than just souvenirs." "Speaking of which," Roy said, lowering his voice as the couple moved toward the door, "I got word that Veronica Yellowhair is bringing in some of her rugs tomorrow. Best weaver on the reservation, but particular about who sells her work. I'd like you to handle it." "Me?" Emma blinked in surprise. "I don't know enough about weaving to—" "You know how to listen," Roy interrupted. "That's what Veronica values. The rest you'll learn." The vote of confidence warmed her. In the 3 months since her arrival, Emma had moved from desperate relief at any employment to genuine appreciation for the work. The trading post wasn't merely a store, but a crossroads of cultures, a repository of stories told through silver, wool, clay, and stone. That evening, as she walked home along the dusty road, Noah securely wrapped against her chest in Nina's carrier, Emma mentally catalogued the day's small victories. The difficult customer she'd managed to satisfy, the complex jewelry display she'd arranged, the increase in her commission as sales improved. The money wasn't much by outside standards, but it was hers, earned through her own efforts rather than Jack's grudging charity. The garden plot behind her cabin offered its own rewards. Tomato plants now staked and heavy with green fruit. Corn, stalks reaching toward the sky. Zucchini spreading its broad leaves across the ground. Key had helped her install a simple irrigation system, and Daniel often stopped by to adjust it, his quiet presence a comfort rather than an intrusion. As she approached the Begay property, Emma noticed an unfamiliar truck parked in the driveway, newer and more expensive than the family's weathered pickup. A man in a business suit stood talking with Key near the workshop, their body language tense. Emma slowed her pace, not wanting to interrupt what appeared to be a difficult conversation. He spotted her and raised a hand in greeting, effectively ending his discussion with the stranger. The man turned, assessed Emma and Noah with a quick glance, then climbed into his truck without acknowledging them. As he drove away, dust billowing. Behind his vehicle, Emma joined Key. "Everything all right?" she asked, adjusting Noah's position as he squirmed against her. Key's face was unreadable. "Government man, Indian Health Service, nothing to worry about." But something in his tone suggested otherwise. Emma had lived with the Begay family long enough to recognize when concerns were being minimized for her benefit. Before she could press further, Nina emerged from the main house, wiping her hands on her apron. "Emma, good. You're home. Lily's making a special dinner tonight. It's Daniel's birthday. You'll join us?" "Of course," Emma agreed, accepting the distraction. "Let me just change Noah and freshen up." Later, gathered around the table laden with Daniel's favorite foods, mutton stew, fry bread, corn roasted in the husk, the earlier, tension seemed forgotten. Daniel, normally so reserved, smiled as Lily presented a lopsided cake decorated with twists of licorice. Grandmother Elsie told stories of his childhood adventures, making even stoic Key laugh at the memory of 5-year-old Daniel trying to lasso the family dog. 23, Nina marveled, serving her son an extra-large piece of cake, a man grown. With a man's responsibilities, Key added, his expression momentarily shadowed before brightening again. But tonight we celebrate. After dinner, as Emma helped clear the dishes, Nina pulled her aside. "The clinic in Cedar Ridge called today," she said quietly. "They're looking for an administrative assistant. Someone mentioned you have healthcare experience." Emma nearly dropped the plate she was holding. "Was it Teresa from the art class?" Nina nodded. "The position isn't nursing, just filing and scheduling to start, but the director said there might be opportunities for training. I told them you'd call tomorrow." "Nina, Emma was speechless. The possibility of working in healthcare again, even peripherally, sent her mind racing with possibilities. "It's more money than the trading post," Nina continued practically, "and regular hours. You could take classes at the community college in Farmington next year if you wanted." The thought both thrilled and terrified Emma. But what about Roy? I can't just leave him without notice. And Noah, the commute would be longer, and Lily has school. "Lily is not the only one who can watch a baby," Nina said firmly. "I worked while raising my children. So did my mother before me." She touched Emma's arm gently. "Just call them. See what they say." That night, Emma lay awake long after Noah had fallen asleep, weighing her options. The trading post had been her lifeline. Roy, a steady presence during her most vulnerable time. Yet the clinic offered not just better pay, but a path back toward the career she'd once envisioned for herself. Could she manage the longer commute? The different hours? The new responsibilities while caring for a growing baby? Through the small window of her cabin, the stars glittered with impossible clarity, the desert night providing perspective on her mundane concerns. 4 months ago, she had stood abandoned at the trading post, her future a blank void of uncertainty. Now she was, considering which job better aligned with her long-term goals. The realization made her smile into the darkness. The next morning, Emma called the clinic director, Dr. Yazzie, from the trading post's office phone during her break. The conversation was brief but promising. The position was part-time initially, 3 days a week, with potential to expand. The starting salary was indeed better than her current earnings, and Dr. Yazzie seemed genuinely interested in her community college coursework. "But we need people committed to the community," the director said, "especially those willing to learn our ways while bringing their own skills." Emma hung up, feeling both excited and guilty. When Roy returned from his supply run to Farmington, she steeled herself for a difficult conversation. "Roy, I need to tell you something." He looked up from the inventory clipboard, his expression curious rather than concerned. "That sounds serious. Everything okay with the little one?" "Noah's fine. It's about... well, I've been offered another position at the clinic in Cedar Ridge." To her surprise, Roy grinned broadly. "About time! I was wondering when Marcia Yazzie would get around to calling you." Emma stared at him. "You knew?" "Small communities, Emma. Word gets around." He set down the clipboard. "I mentioned to Martha from the art class that you had healthcare experience. Martha told her cousin who works at the clinic, Circle of Life out here." Relieved but confused, Emma shook her head. "You're not upset after you trained me and everything?" Roy's weathered face softened. "Look, I didn't take you on as some kind of indentured servant. I took you on because you needed work and I needed help. You've been great, better than I expected, honestly. But the trading post was never going to be your future." "It's only part-time to start," Emma said quickly. "I could still work here some days if you need—" "Don't you dare!" Roy interrupted with mock sternness. "This is your chance to get back on the path you were meant for. Besides, my niece Alicia just graduated high school. She's been pestering me for a summer job." The simplicity of his acceptance brought tears to Emma's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll come by for coffee now and then, and maybe bring that cute kid of yours." He picked up the clipboard again, signaling an end to the emotional moment. "Now, when do they want you to start?" 2 weeks later, Emma drove Nina's truck to the Cedar Ridge Clinic for her first day, Noah securely fastened in his car seat. Nina had insisted on accompanying them, ostensibly to shop at the reservation's only proper grocery store, but Emma suspected she wanted to help ease the transition. The clinic was a modest single-story building with a small parking lot and desert landscaping. Inside, the waiting room was already half full with patients, young mothers with children, elderly men and women, a few teenagers. Dr. Yazzie met them at the reception desk, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and efficient movements. "Emma, welcome. And this must be Noah." She smiled at the baby, then at Nina. "Mrs. Begay, good to see you." Nina nodded respectfully. "I'll take Noah while Emma works. We'll be at the community center with Faye's morning class." Emma transferred the diaper bag to Nina, then kissed Noah's forehead. "Are you sure this is okay? The whole day is a long time and we will be fine," Nina said firmly. "Many hands to help. You focus on learning your new work." As they left, Emma felt a momentary pang of separation anxiety, quickly replaced by determination. This was why she'd come west, wasn't it? Not to follow Jack, really, but to build something better for herself and Noah. The morning passed in a blur of forms, procedures, and introductions. The clinic staff was small but dedicated. 2 doctors, 3 nurses, a laboratory technician, and now Emma at the front desk. Many of the patients greeted her with curious but not unfriendly glances, word of her situation having preceded her arrival. "You're the girl from the trading post?" an elderly woman observed as Emma scheduled her follow-up appointment. "The one staying with the Begays?" "Yes, ma'am," Emma confirmed, wondering if the woman disapproved. But the woman simply nodded. "Good people, the Begays. Key's father delivered my first baby when the roads were snowed in, 40 years ago now." Throughout the day, Emma received similar comments, brief acknowledgements of her connection to the Begay family, each one carrying an undercurrent of acceptance by association. By lunchtime, she realized that the family's reputation was serving as a bridge between her and the community, spanning the gap that might otherwise have existed between an outsider and those with generational ties to the land. Dr. Yazzie joined her in the small break room as she ate the lunch Nina had packed. "How's it going so far? Not too overwhelming?" "It's a lot to learn," Emma admitted, "but it feels right. Familiar somehow." The doctor nodded, pouring herself coffee from the ancient pot in the corner. "Healthcare is healthcare, whether it's a fancy hospital in Phoenix or our little clinic. People need help. We do what we can with what we have." She settled into the chair across from Emma. "Nina says you were studying nursing before." "Just the prerequisites," Emma clarified. "Then life happened." "Life has a way of doing that." Dr. Yazzie sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "There's a program through Indian Health Service, scholarships for healthcare education in exchange for service commitment, not just for tribal members, though they get preference. Someone with roots in the community might qualify too." The implications of this statement weren't lost on Emma. "I've only been here a few months." "Roots grow at different rates," Dr. Yazzie replied cryptically. "Something to think about for the future, perhaps." When Emma picked up Noah from the community center later that afternoon, she found him contentedly playing on a colorful mat, surrounded by Faye, Nina, and several other women from the art class. He showed no signs of distress at her absence. In fact, he seemed to be thoroughly enjoying the attention. "How was he?" Emma asked, kneeling to gather him into her arms. "An angel," Faye assured her. "Didn't even cry when his bottle was late." "And you?" Nina inquired quietly as they walked to the truck. "How was your first day?" Emma considered the question, sorting through the complex emotions of the day. "Good. Different than I expected, but good. Dr. Yazzie mentioned a scholarship program for healthcare education." Nina's expression remained neutral, but her eyes sharpened with interest. The IHS program, competitive but valuable for those who qualify. She seemed to think I might, Emma said, surprised by the hope in her own voice. Nina helped secure Noah in his car seat before responding. Dr. Yazzie doesn't say things she doesn't mean. If she mentioned it, she believes it's possible. She closed the truck door and turned to Emma. But such programs require commitment to the community, years of service after graduation. The unspoken question hung in the air between them. Was Emma ready for such a commitment? 4 months ago, she would have dismissed the idea outright. Her plan had been to establish herself with Jack, perhaps move to a larger city once they were stable. The reservation had been a means to an end, not a destination. Now, as she drove the familiar road back to the Begay home, the landscape spoke to her differently. The mesas standing sentinel against the horizon. The scattered communities nestled in valleys and along ridgelines. The ancient petroglyphs etched into stone faces, telling stories that stretched back millennia. Not her heritage, yet increasingly part of her daily reality. That evening, after Noah was asleep, Emma sat on the cabin's small porch, journal open on her lap. The garden thrived in the twilight, tomatoes ripening to red, corn tassels dancing in the slight breeze, zucchini threatening to overrun its allotted space. Growth where once there had been only dust. A soft footfall alerted her to Key's approach. He carried 2 mugs of coffee, offering one to Emma before settling on the step beside her. "Nina says your first day went well," he said after they had sat in companionable silence for a few moments. Emma nodded. "Everyone was very kind." "They know you as the Begay's guest," Key said simply, as if this explained everything. The phrase triggered a memory of the man in the business suit, the tension she'd witnessed. "Key, that government man who came the other day, was there a problem?" Key stared into the gathering darkness, his profile stoic in the fading light. For a moment, Emma thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured. "The Indian Health Service is reducing funding for our region. Many small clinics may close. Cedar Ridge is on the list." Emma felt a chill despite the warm evening. "But I just started. Dr. Yazzie didn't mention anything about closing." "Marcia, Yazzie does not surrender easily," Key said, with the ghost of a smile. "She is gathering evidence to show why the clinic is essential, documenting every patient, every service. It is a fight she has fought before." "Will it work?" Emma asked. Key shrugged slightly. "Perhaps. The government has made promises to the since before my grandfather's time. Some they keep, some they break, some they forget until reminded." He sipped his coffee. "This is why she hired you, I think. To help with the documentation, the evidence gathering. Marcia sees strategy in people." The revelation should have made Emma feel used, but instead she felt a surge of purpose. If her organizational skills could help protect a vital community resource, wasn't that a worthy use of her abilities? "How can I help?" she asked. For the first time, Key looked directly at her, his expression serious but warm. "You already are. By being there, by caring about the work, by seeing the people as people and not problems." He paused. "The man who came, he spoke of resource allocation and service consolidation. These are words used by those who see numbers, not faces." In the week that followed, Emma threw herself into her new role with renewed dedication. She organized patient files, digitized records where possible on the clinic's ancient computer, created spreadsheets tracking services provided and outcomes achieved. Dr. Yazzie observed her efforts with approval, but said little, allowing Emma to find her own approach to the challenges. The commute became a time of reflection. Each morning, as she drove towards Cedar Ridge, Noah secure with Nina or Lily or occasionally grandmother Elsie, Emma used the solitude to think about her evolving place in this community. Each evening as she returned, she noted landmarks that had become familiar. The lightning-struck juniper near the reservation boundary, the rock formation shaped like a sleeping bear, the abandoned trading post from the 1940s, now home to nesting swallows. On Friday of her second week, Dr. Yazzie called her into the small administrative office. "We've received notice of a site visit," she said without preamble. "Next Thursday. Representatives from IHS Regional Office will evaluate our operation. Our patient load, our community impact." Emma understood the subtext immediately. The closure decision. Potentially, Dr. Yazzie's normally composed features showed signs of strain. "We need to be thoroughly prepared. Records in order, facility spotless, staff ready to answer questions." She tapped a stack of folders on her desk. "Can you organize these case studies? They show successful health outcomes directly tied to our accessibility." "Absolutely," Emma agreed, accepting the folders. "I'll create a presentation, something visual that emphasizes the human impact." "Good." Dr. Yazzie hesitated, then added, "They'll want to speak with patients too. People willing to share their experiences, explain what the clinic means to them." Emma thought of the elderly woman who'd mentioned Key's father delivering her baby, of the young mothers who brought their children for immunizations, of the diabetic patients who received monthly monitoring that prevented costly hospitalizations. "I might know some people," she said, "through the B-gaze, through the trading post, people who would speak honestly about the clinic's importance." Dr. Yazzie's relief was visible. "That would be helpful. We need voices beyond our own." That evening, Emma shared the situation with Nina as they prepared dinner in the main house kitchen. Noah sat in a handmade high chair Daniel had crafted, contentedly gumming a piece of fry bread. "Of course people will speak," Nina said matter-of-factly. "Key can talk to the chapter house council. They will send representatives. And Roy knows everyone who comes through the trading post," Emma added, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. "He can spread the word too." Nina nodded approvingly. "You understand now how things work here. Not through formal channels only, but through relationships, through stories shared over coffee, through family connections across the reservation." "I'm learning," Emma acknowledged. "It's different from how I grew up. My parents knew our immediate neighbors, but that was about it. Everyone kept to themselves." "A strange way to live," Nina observed. "Humans are not meant for such isolation." Later, after Noah was asleep, Emma called her parents home in Ohio. She had spoken to them only twice since arriving in Arizona, both conversations strained and brief. Her mother answered on the fourth ring. "Hello? Mom, it's Emma." "Emma." Her mother's voice was carefully neutral. "Is everything all right? The baby?" "Noah's fine. Growing every day." Emma took a deep breath. "I wanted to let you know that I've started a new job at a health clinic. It's part-time for now, but there's potential for advancement, maybe even support for going back to school." Silence stretched across the line before her mother responded. "That sounds promising. Your father will be pleased to hear you're working in healthcare again." The tentative approval sent a complicated mix of emotions through Emma: relief, resentment, a lingering desire for parental validation she thought she'd outgrown. "We're doing well here," she continued, determined to share her reality rather than what her parents might want to hear. "I have garden. Noah has people who love him. The Navajo family we're staying with has been incredibly kind." "You're still with them? I thought that was temporary." Emma glanced around the small cabin that had become home. "It's working for now. They've become important to us." Another silence, this one heavier. "Emma, I know your father and I weren't supportive when you decided to follow that boy. We were worried, and yes, disappointed. But you're our daughter. If things aren't working out there, you can always come home." The offer, probably meant kindly, struck Emma as profoundly disconnected from her current reality. Come home to what? To the silent disapproval, the careful avoidance of mentioning Noah's father, the subtle pressure to conform to their vision of an appropriate life. "Thank you," she said, not wanting to escalate the tension. "But we're building something here. It's not what I expected, but it's becoming something real." She hesitated, then added, "Maybe someday you and Dad could visit. Meet Noah, see where we live." "Perhaps," her mother said non-committal, "when he's older." After hanging up, Emma sat on the porch steps, letting the cool night air wash away the residual tension from the call. A movement near the main house caught her attention. Grandmother Elsie making her way slowly toward the cabin, walking stick tapping rhythmically against the hard-packed earth. "You should be sleeping," Emma called softly as the elder approached. "Old bones need less rest." "Than young ones," Elsie replied, settling beside Emma with a soft grunt. "The mind keeps moving, even when the body wants stillness." "I was just thinking about home," Emma admitted, "or what used to be home." Elsie nodded, as if this made perfect sense. Home shifts like sand. Sometimes where we begin is not where we belong. "How do you know where you belong?" Emma asked, the question emerging from some deep place of uncertainty. Elsie was quiet for a long moment, her face turned toward the star-filled sky. "The old ones say we recognize home in our bones, in our breath, the place that lets your spirit expand instead of shrink." She patted Emma's hand with gnarled fingers. "You will know when you find it." As Elsie made her way back to the main house, Emma remained on the porch, contemplating her words. The desert night enfolded her in its vast, quiet embrace. The only sounds, the distant yip of coyotes and the soft rustle of wind through juniper branches. Noah slept peacefully inside, growing stronger each day in this place so different from where she had imagined raising him. The challenges ahead were substantial. The clinic's uncertain future, her own educational aspirations, the complex reality of building a life as a single mother in a community where she would always, on some level, be an outsider. Yet sitting there under the immense canopy of stars, Emma felt a curious peace settling into her bones. Not because the path forward was clear, but because she was no longer walking it alone. The day of the clinic inspection arrived with an unexpected summer storm. Emma woke before dawn to the sound of thunder rolling across the desert, lightning illuminating the small cabin in brief, electric flashes. Noah stirred in his crib, making small sounds of distress at each thunderclap. She lifted him, whispering reassurances against his downy head. "Just the sky talking, little one. Nothing to fear." By the time she dressed and prepared for the day, the worst of the storm had passed, leaving behind the rich, earthy scent of rain-soaked desert. Puddles dotted the path to the main house, reflecting the lightening sky in perfect miniature. Emma stepped carefully, Noah secure in his carrier against her chest. Nina was already awake, coffee brewing on the stove. "The roads might be difficult," she observed as Emma entered. "Flash floods in the washes. You should take Key's truck, it sits higher than mine." "I can't ask for that," Emma protested. "He needs it for work." "He already offered," Nina replied, pouring coffee into a travel mug. "Said to tell you good luck today." The simple gesture of support touched Emma deeply. In the months since her arrival, Key had moved from intimidating stranger to steady presence in her life, his quiet approval as meaningful as his wife's more demonstrative care. "I'll need it," Emma said, accepting the mug. The inspection team arrives at 9. Dr. Yazzie wants everyone there by 7:30 to prepare. Nina took Noah from his carrier with practiced ease. "We've got this one. You focus on saving the clinic." The drive to Cedar Ridge proved challenging, just as Nina had predicted. Twice, Emma had to detour around flooded washes, the truck's powerful engine negotiating muddy paths that would have stymied Nina's older vehicle. She arrived at the clinic with barely 10 minutes to spare before their preparation meeting. The small staff had gathered in the waiting room, faces tense but determined. Dr. Yazzie stood at the center, clipboard in hand, projecting a calm authority that steadied everyone around her. The inspection team consists of 3 people. She explained, a financial analyst, a medical reviewer, and a community impact assessor. They'll examine our records, observe our operations, and speak with patients and staff. Our goal is to demonstrate not just efficiency, but necessity, that this clinic provides essential services that would be unavailable if patients had to travel to larger facilities. She assigned specific responsibilities, turning finally to Emma. Ms. Reynolds, you'll manage the documentation presentation. You've organized our case studies and impact statements. Present them clearly, honestly, without embellishment. Your facts speak for themselves. Emma nodded, grateful for the vote of confidence, but acutely aware of the stakes. In her short time at the clinic, she'd witnessed firsthand how vital its services were to the community. The elderly patients who couldn't drive the 90 minutes to the hospital in Farmington. The young mothers who relied on the clinic's vaccination program, the chronic disease management that kept countless community members healthy and independent. At precisely 9 o'clock, a government SUV pulled into the parking lot. 3 individuals emerged. A middle-aged woman in a severe suit, a younger man with a tablet computer, and an older Native American man whose bearing suggested military background. Dr. Marcia Yazzie, the woman introduced herself, extending a hand to the lead inspector. Welcome to Cedar Ridge Clinic. The inspectors moved through the facility with methodical precision, examining equipment, reviewing procedures, questioning staff about their qualifications and responsibilities. Emma presented her documentation calmly, highlighting key statistics and patient outcomes, answering questions directly without defensiveness or overstatement. By mid-morning, the waiting room had filled with community members, some with scheduled appointments, others clearly there to show support. Emma recognized familiar faces from the trading post, the art class, and the Begay's extended family network. Several elders had arrived in traditional dress, their dignified presence lending weight to the proceedings. The community impact assessor, the Native American man, identified as Mr. Begay, no relation to Key but from the same clan, spent considerable time interviewing these community members, noting their responses with thoughtful nods. This clinic saved my husband's life, one elderly woman explained in halting English. Heart attack last winter, too far to hospital. Dr. Yazzie stabilized him until helicopter came. My granddaughter has asthma, another added. We come here twice monthly for treatments, cannot drive to Farmington every time she struggles to breathe. As the morning progressed, Emma found herself increasingly moved by these testimonials, simple, unembellished accounts of the clinic's role in the community's well-being. This wasn't about budgets or metrics, but about people whose lives were tangibly improved by having healthcare accessible within their community. During a brief lull, Dr. Yazzie joined Emma at the reception desk. "You're doing well," she said, quietly. "Mr. Lee from Finance seems impressed with your documentation system." "I hope it's enough," Emma replied, watching as the inspectors conferred in a corner of the waiting room. "They don't give much away, do they?" "Government officials rarely do." Dr. Yazzie's mouth quirked in a slight smile. "But I've been through these inspections before. This one feels different, more thorough but also more attentive. Mr. Begay actually listens to the elders. That's a good sign." The clinic doors opened, admitting a gust of post-storm air and a familiar figure, Grandmother Elsie, supported by Daniel on one arm and Lily on the other. Emma felt a surge of surprise and gratitude at their appearance. Dr. Yazzie moved forward immediately. "Mrs. Begay, we're honored by your visit. Please let me find you a comfortable seat." Elsie waved off the concern with a dismissive gesture. "I did not come to sit. I came to speak." Her eyes, sharp despite her advanced age, fixed on the inspection team. "Who is in charge here?" The lead inspector stepped forward, introducing herself as Ms. Thompson. Elsie assessed her with the measuring gaze of one who has witnessed decades of officials come and go. "My father helped build this clinic," she announced, her voice stronger than Emma had ever heard it. "Before that, our people died from simple illnesses. Children, mothers, elders. The government promised healthcare as part of our treaties. This clinic is not charity, it is obligation." Ms. Thompson maintained her professional demeanor, but Emma noticed a subtle shift in her posture, a recognition, perhaps of the authority Elsie commanded despite her physical frailty. "We understand the clinic's historical significance, Mrs. Begay. Our assessment must consider multiple factors, including financial sustainability and service efficiency." "Efficiency," Elsie repeated, infusing the word with quiet disdain. "My grandson Daniel had pneumonia as a child. The efficient solution was the hospital in Farmington. But the roads were washed out like today. This clinic saved him." She fixed Ms. Thompson with an unwavering gaze. "How do you measure the efficiency of a life saved?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable by budget spreadsheets or utilization metrics. Mr. Begay, the community impact assessor, nodded almost imperceptibly, making a note on his tablet. The inspection continued through the afternoon, the team examining every aspect of the clinic's operation. Emma remained at her post, answering questions, providing documentation, observing the subtle dynamics between inspectors and staff. By 4 o'clock, the formal assessment was complete, the team gathering their materials to depart. "We'll submit our report within 30 days, Ms. Thompson informed Dr. Yazzie. "Thank you for your cooperation." "And the timeline for a decision?" Dr. Yazzie pressed. "Likely within 60 days, though these matters can sometimes take longer." Ms. Thompson's expression revealed nothing of her impressions or inclinations. As the inspection team departed, a collective exhale seemed to pass through the clinic staff. Dr. Yazzie gathered them in the break room, her face showing the first signs of fatigue after maintaining professional composure throughout the day. "Thank you, everyone. You represented this clinic with dignity and competence. Now we wait and continue serving our patients as we always have." Emma approached Elsie, who had remained seated in the waiting room with Daniel and Lily. "Thank you for coming," she said, deeply moved by the elder's intervention. "What you said about the clinic being an obligation, not charity, I saw it register with them." Elsie nodded, satisfied. "Words have power when spoken with truth. I have seen too many promises broken in my lifetime. Some must be reminded of what they have forgotten." The drive home was silent, Emma processing the events of the day while Daniel navigated the still muddy roads. Lily sat in the back with Noah, singing softly to keep him entertained. The desert landscape, transformed by the morning's rain, displayed a rare palette of greens and purples as dormant plants seized the brief opportunity to flower. At the Begay home, Nina was waiting with a pot of stew and fresh bread. The kitchen, warm and fragrant after the emotional intensity of the day. As they ate, Emma recounted the inspection, Elsie's powerful statement, the community's show of support. "Now we pray and we wait," Nina concluded pragmatically, "and we continue living." The following days settled back into routine, though Emma found herself checking the mail with renewed attention, hoping for news of the clinic's fate. Noah continued to thrive, now crawling with determined energy, exploring the cabin and garden with insatiable curiosity. Her work at the clinic felt more meaningful than ever, each patient interaction a reminder of what was at stake. 2 weeks after the inspection, Emma returned from work to find an unfamiliar car parked in the driveway of the main house, not government issue like the inspector's vehicle, but a late-model sedan with Arizona plates. Something about it triggered a faint alarm in her mind, though she couldn't identify why. She carried Noah toward the cabin, intending to get him settled before investigating the visitor when the main house door opened. Nina emerged, her expression carefully neutral in a way that immediately put Emma on alert. "Emma," she called, "someone is here to see you." "For me?" Emma frowned, adjusting Noah on her hip. "Who would—" The words died in her throat as a man stepped onto the porch behind Nina. Tall and lean, with dark hair cut shorter than she remembered, dressed in clothes more expensive than he used to wear. The face that had haunted her dreams and nightmares for months. Jack. Time seemed to suspend as they stared at each other across the yard. Noah, oblivious to the significance of the moment, babbled happily and reached toward Nina, his favorite person after Emma herself. The simple gesture, her son recognizing this Navajo woman as someone who mattered to him, someone safe, anchored Emma against the tide of emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "What are you doing here?" she finally managed, her voice steadier than she expected. Jack stepped forward, stopping at Nina's subtle headshake. "I came to see you," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "And the baby." "His name is Noah," Emma said, the protective instinct in her flaring. "And you had your chance to see him. You chose to leave $500 instead." Jack had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I know. I handled things badly. I wasn't ready then." He glanced at the main house, the garden, the modest cabin. "I didn't expect this." "What did you expect?" Emma asked, genuinely curious despite herself. He shrugged, the gesture achingly familiar. "I thought you'd go back to Ohio, back to your parents." The assumptions embedded in that statement, that she couldn't manage without him or her family, that she had no resources of her own, sparked a slow-burning anger in Emma's chest. "How did you find us?" she asked, instead of responding to his presumption. "I went back to the trading post. The old man, Roy, wouldn't tell me anything at first. Said you were doing fine and didn't need complications." Jack's mouth twisted in a rueful smile. "I had to convince him I just wanted to make things right." Emma could imagine Roy's skepticism, his protective instinct toward her. "And he believed you?" "Eventually. Told me you were working at the clinic in Cedar Ridge now, staying with a Navajo family. Took some asking around in town to get the exact location." Jack's gaze moved to Noah, who was watching him with solemn curiosity. "He's gotten big." "Babies do that," Emma replied, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "They grow, they change, they learn who they can count on." Nina, who had been silently observing this exchange, spoke up. "I will take Noah inside. You two should talk." Before Emma could object, Nina had gently extracted Noah from her arms and returned to the house, leaving Emma and Jack facing each other in the gathering dusk. "You look good," Jack offered after an awkward silence. "Different than I remember." Emma didn't acknowledge the compliment, such as it was. "Why are you really here, Jack? After 6 months of nothing?" He ran a hand through his hair, another familiar gesture that once would have softened her. "I've been thinking about you, about the baby, Noah, about how I left things." He took a step closer. "I've got a good job now in Phoenix. Sales manager for a solar company car, benefits, the works." "Congratulations," Emma said flatly. "I've got an apartment too, 2 bedrooms, in a nice area with good schools." Jack continued, as if he hadn't noticed her tone. "I've been getting established, making sure I had something solid to offer before I came looking for you." The implication slowly dawned on Emma. You think I'm going to go with you to Phoenix? That we're going to be a family now that you've decided you're ready?" Jack's confidence faltered slightly at her incredulous tone. "I thought you'd be relieved, happy. Isn't this what you wanted, what you came west for in the first place?" Emma laughed, the sound surprising even her, not bitter or angry, but genuinely amused at the absurdity of his assumption. What I wanted 6 months ago and what I want now are very different things, Jack. Look, I know you're upset. You have every right to be. I was a jerk leaving you like that. He gestured vaguely toward the Begay property. But you can't seriously prefer this to a real home in the city? What kind of life is this for a kid? The dismissal of the life she'd built ignited something fierce in Emma's chest. A good one, she said with quiet intensity. A life with people who showed up when it mattered, who took in 2 strangers and made us family, who taught me what real strength looks like. Jack shook his head, bewilderment plain on his face. Emma, be reasonable. These people are nice, sure. They helped you out when you were desperate, but they're not your people. This isn't your culture, your world. And Phoenix is, Emma countered, a city where we know no one, dependent entirely on you and your new job. How long before you decide you're not ready again? That's not fair, Jack protested. I made a mistake. I'm trying to fix it. No, Emma said, suddenly weary of the conversation. You're trying to ease your conscience. There's a difference. As they faced each other in the deepening twilight, Emma was struck by how little she felt for this man who had once been the center of her world. Not hatred or rage, not even the aching disappointment that had consumed her those first weeks. Just a profound awareness that he was now a stranger. To her, as she surely was to him. Noah is your son, she acknowledged, her voice gentler now. If you want to be part of his life, we can figure something out. But I'm not leaving Cedar Ridge. I have work that matters here, friends, a future I'm building. Jack stared at her, as if seeing her for the first time. Perhaps he was. You've changed, he said finally. Yes, Emma agreed simply. I have. Inside the main house, she could see figures moving behind the curtained windows. Nina probably preparing dinner, Lily doing homework at the table, Key listening to the radio as he carved one of the small animals he created in his spare time. Noah would be there too, passed from loving arms to loving arms, surrounded by people who had chosen him, chosen her, when they had no obligation to do so. I'd like to see Noah before I go, Jack said, his voice subdued. Just for a few minutes. Emma hesitated, then nodded. Come inside. Meet the people who have been raising your son while you were getting established in Phoenix. The introduction was awkward but civilized. Nina, ever the gracious hostess, offered Jack coffee and bread. Key acknowledged him with a reserved nod, his judgment withheld but palpable. Lily watched with undisguised curiosity as this stranger, who shared Noah's dark eyes and cleft chin, awkwardly held his son. Noah, to Emma's mixed relief and dismay, showed no particular reaction to Jack, neither recognition nor distress. He submitted to being held with the same placid acceptance he might show a clinic patient or trading post customer, his gaze occasionally returning to Emma for reassurance. Jack stayed for less than an hour, the strained atmosphere eventually becoming unbearable even for him. As he prepared to leave, he pulled Emma aside on the porch. I meant what I said. I want to be part of his life. He ran a finger over Noah's cheek, a gesture of tentative affection. I'll send money, regularly this time, not just a one-time payoff, and I'll visit if that's okay. Emma nodded, surprising herself with her willingness to maintain this connection. Noah should know his father. But understand this, Jack. This is our home now. These people are our family. Any relationship you build with Noah will have to accommodate that reality. He looked as if he wanted to argue, then simply sighed. I wasn't expecting this when I drove out here today. Life rarely gives us what we expect, Emma replied, thinking of the day she had stepped off the bus at Four Corners Trading Post, full of naive hope for a future that had dissolved like mist in the desert sun. Sometimes it gives us what we need instead. After Jack drove away, headlights cutting through the gathering darkness, Emma remained on the porch, Noah drowsing against her shoulder. Nina joined her, silent but supportive, her presence a balm after the emotional turbulence of the encounter. "Are you all right?" she asked finally. Emma considered the question, taking inventory of her feelings. "Yes," she said, realizing with some surprise that it was true. "I think I needed that. Needed to see him again and realize that I'm not the same person who followed him here." Nina nodded, understanding without need for further explanation. The desert changes people, strips away what isn't necessary, shows what remains when everything else is gone. They stood together, in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast desert sky. In the distance, a coyote called, its lonely voice echoing across the landscape. Noah stirred against Emma's shoulder, making the small sounds that preceded waking. "He'll be hungry," Nina observed. "I should get him to the cabin," Emma agreed, but made no move to leave. Something felt unfinished, a thought half-formed at the edges of her consciousness. "Nina," she said hesitantly, "when you and the others took us in that first night, did you ever think we might stay? Become part of your lives like this?" Nina considered the question, her face thoughtful in the porch light's soft glow. "When I was a girl, my grandmother taught me to weave. She said the strongest patterns aren't planned from the beginning. They emerge as the weaver responds to the materials, to the colors that want to work together." She smiled, touching Noah's dark head gently. "Perhaps life is the same way. The strongest bonds aren't always the ones we plan, but the ones that form naturally when we are open to possibility." The simple wisdom resonated deeply with Emma. 6 months ago, stranded at the trading post with a newborn and shattered dreams, she could never have envisioned the life she now led. Working at a clinic, learning Navajo weaving from Elsie, planting a garden in desert soil, finding friendship with women like Faye and Dr. Yazzie, watching her son thrive in the care of multiple loving hands. None of it had been planned. All of it now felt essential, as if the disconnected threads of her previous life had finally been woven into a pattern that made sense. "I should call my parents," she said suddenly. "Tell them about Jack's visit, about our decision to stay." Nina nodded, accepting this non sequitur as part of Emma's processing. "Use our phone. Take your time." Inside, the warmth and familiar sense of the Begay home enveloped Emma. Pignon smoke from the small fire Key had lit against the evening chill, sage and sweetgrass hanging in bundles near the door, the lingering aroma of Nina's bread. Key sat at the table repairing a piece of tack for his horses, while Lily worked on what appeared to be a school project. The scene of everyday domesticity, unremarkable except in how completely it had come to represent safety and belonging to Emma. She settled Noah in the portable playpen they kept in the main house and dialed her parents' number, prepared for the difficult conversation ahead. As the phone rang, she looked around at the faces that had become family, not by blood or legal document, but through the daily choice to care for one another, to make space in their lives for a young woman and her child who had arrived with nothing but need and determination. Whatever her parents' reaction might be, whatever Jack might eventually decide about his role in Noah's life, Emma knew with sudden, unshakable certainty that she had found her home, not in the physical structure of the cabin or even the reservation itself, but in this web of relationships that held her secure without confining her, that supported her dreams while respecting her independence. The desert had indeed changed her, as Nina had observed. It had burned away pretense and expectation, leaving behind the essential truth of who she was and what she valued. In losing everything she had once thought necessary, Emma had discovered what truly mattered and found herself unexpectedly rich beyond measure. 1 year after Emma stepped off the bus at Four Corners Trading Post, the desert bloomed. Unusual spring rains had transformed the landscape, carpeting the normally sparse, Terrain with wildflowers, purple lupine, golden poppies, scarlet paintbrush. Emma's garden flourished beyond all expectations. Tomato plants heavy with fruit, cornstalks tall and proud, zucchini threatening to overtake everything in its path. Noah, now 18 months old, toddled through the rows, his chubby hands reaching for bright red cherry tomatoes under Emma's watchful eye. His vocabulary grew daily, a mix of English words and Navajo phrases picked up from his many caregivers. "Shima!" he called, the Navajo word for mother that Elsie had taught him. "Look!" Emma knelt beside him, watching as he proudly displayed a tomato he'd managed to pluck without crushing. "Good job, sweet boy," she praised, adding it to their harvest basket. In the year since Jack's brief reappearance, much had changed. The clinic in Cedar Ridge had received a reprieve, not permanent funding, but an extended evaluation period that Dr. Yazzie was determined to use to prove their indispensability. Emma had been promoted to office manager, her organizational skills and growing knowledge of the community making her increasingly valuable. Jack had kept his word, sending monthly support payments and visiting every 6 to 8 weeks. The visits remained awkward, but Emma maintained them for Noah's sake, believing her son deserved the chance to know his father. Jack never quite understood her attachment to the reservation, to the Begay family, but he had stopped suggesting she move to Phoenix, accepting with reluctant respect the life she had created. Most significantly, Emma had been accepted into the Indian Health Service Scholarship Program, allowing her to resume her nursing education through online courses and weekend classes at the community college in Farmington. The program would eventually require her full-time attendance at nursing school, but it would also provide a living stipend during that period and guarantee employment upon graduation. Employment she had already decided would be at the Cedar Ridge Clinic. As Emma and Noah finished gathering vegetables for dinner, a familiar truck appeared on the dusty road leading to the Begay property. Dr. Yazzie rarely made house calls these days, her administrative duties keeping her tied to the clinic, but occasionally she visited to consult with Elsie about traditional healing practices she was working to integrate with conventional medicine. "Emma!" she called, climbing from the vehicle with unusual energy. "I've been looking for you." "Is everything all right?" Emma asked, shifting Noah to her hip as she approached. "Better than all right," Dr. Yazzie replied, her typically reserved expression breaking into a rare smile. "I've just come from a meeting with the IHS regional director. The clinic evaluation results are in." Emma's heart quickened. "And we're not just staying open, we're expanding. Additional funding for a mental health program, expanded prenatal care, and," she paused significantly, "a training position for a nursing student with community ties." The implications weren't lost on Emma. "For me, after I complete the first phase of the program," Dr. Yazzie nodded. "If you're willing. The scholarship committee was impressed with your application, your community integration, and your commitment to rural healthcare. This would allow you to complete your clinical rotations locally rather than relocating to Albuquerque or Phoenix." Relief and gratitude flooded through Emma. The prospect of temporary relocation had been her greatest concern about the program. The idea of uprooting Noah from the only home he'd known weighing heavily on her decision. "What changed their minds about the clinic?" she asked, still processing the unexpected news. Dr. Yazzie's expression turned thoughtful. "Many factors. Our documentation certainly helped, showing the actual impact of our services on health outcomes. But mostly, I think it was the community response. The letters from patients, the testimony from tribal elders, the chapter house resolutions supporting us." She smiled at Noah, who was watching her with solemn attention. They realized what we already knew, that healthcare isn't just about facilities and procedures. It's about people, relationships, trust built over generations. That evening, a celebration gathered in the Begay's yard. Word had spread quickly, as it always did on the reservation, and friends appeared bearing food, drinks, and congratulations. Roy closed the trading post early to attend. Faye brought her teenage art students, who had prepared a banner for the clinic. Martha and Teresa arrived with homemade pies. Even some of Emma's patients came, elderly men and women who rarely ventured out after dark but made an exception for this community victory. Tables were arranged in a large circle, dishes spread across them in potluck abundance, mutton stew, fry bread, roasted corn, Emma's garden vegetables prepared in Nina's traditional recipes. Key and Daniel built a bonfire at the center of the gathering, its flames reaching toward the star-filled sky as darkness settled over the desert. Elsie sat in a place of honor, accepting congratulations with the quiet dignity that had become familiar to Emma. When the initial excitement had calmed and people had filled their plates, the elder raised her hand, a simple gesture that immediately brought silence to the gathering. "Today we celebrate not just a building or a service," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the night air. "We celebrate what happens when we remember our connections to each other, when we speak with one voice about what matters." She looked around the circle, her gaze touching each person. Long ago, our ancestors understood that survival depended on community, not just family by blood, but the wider circle of those who share the land, who help each other through hard seasons. Her eyes found Emma, holding her gaze with meaningful intensity. Sometimes new threads are added to the weaving. Different colors, different textures. The pattern becomes stronger, more beautiful for the difference. Noah, overtired from the excitement, had fallen asleep in Emma's arms, his small body warm and heavy against her chest. As she listened to Elsie's words, Emma felt a profound sense of belonging wash over her, not the anxious striving for acceptance that had marked her early months on the reservation, but the quiet certainty of having found her place in the world. After the guests had departed and the Begay family had retired to the main house, Emma sat alone on the porch of her cabin, Noah sleeping soundly inside. The desert night enfolded her in its vast quiet, stars scattered like silver beads across the black velvet sky. In the distance, the silhouettes of mesas stood sentinel against the horizon, ancient and enduring. A year ago, abandoned and desperate, she had seen only the harshness of this landscape, its unforgiving sun, its scarcity of water, its alien beauty so different from Ohio's gentle woodlands and fields. Now she recognized its deeper gifts: clarity, resilience, the striking vividness of life that persisted against all odds. Like the desert plants that appeared dormant until the rare rains came, Emma had found resources within herself she hadn't known existed: strength to rebuild from nothing, courage to create a new life far from familiar ground, wisdom to recognize true community when she found it. The sound of footsteps drew her attention. Nina approached through the darkness, carrying a small bundle. "May I join you?" she asked, settling beside Emma when she nodded. For a while, they sat in companionable silence, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. Then Nina handed Emma the bundle she'd brought, a small square wrapped in cloth. "Open it," she encouraged. Emma unwrapped the covering to reveal a weaving, not a full rug, but a small wall hanging approximately 12 inches square. Its design was intricate, bands of color forming a pattern that seemed both structured and spontaneous, with symbols woven into the borders that Emma recognized from her lessons with Elsie. "It's beautiful," she said, tracing the pattern with her fingertips. "It's our story," Nina replied. "Yours and Noah's and ours. See here." She pointed to a section of deep blue. "This represents the night you arrived. And here," her finger moved to a pattern of red and yellow, "the storm, the shelter, these symbols along the edge are protection, growth, healing." Emma studied the weaving with new understanding, seeing now how the colors and patterns indeed told a narrative, one of disruption, shelter, gradual integration, and finally harmony. The last section is incomplete, she noticed, indicating the lower edge where threads hung loose, waiting to be woven. Nina nodded. Because the story continues. You'll add to it yourself, as you learn. Elsie says you have good hands for weaving. The gift touched Emma deeply, not just for its beauty, but for what it represented. Acceptance into a tradition passed from mother to daughter for countless generations. Not erasing her difference or her past, but incorporating them into a continuing story. Thank you, she said simply, knowing Nina would understand the depth of gratitude behind the inadequate words. There is a teaching, Nina replied, looking out at the desert night. It says that nothing is ever truly lost when hearts are open. Not people, not stories, not ways of being. She touched the weaving gently. Different threads, same loom. As Nina returned to the main house, Emma remained on the porch, holding the weaving in her lap, its weight solid and comforting. Inside, Noah slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that he was loved, not just by his mother, but by an entire community that had claimed him as their own. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, coursework to complete, patience to care for, the constant negotiation of single motherhood. Jack would visit next month, bringing the complicated emotions. His presence always stirred. Her parents had finally agreed to come see them in the fall, a visit Emma anticipated with equal parts hope and trepidation. But tonight, under the vast desert sky, Emma allowed herself to simply be present in this moment of completion and beginning. The circle that had begun a year ago when she stepped off that bus, desperate and alone, had closed and opened again into a spiral of possibility. She thought of Elsie's story of first man and first woman, emerging into the fourth world after journeying through darkness. Perhaps that was what had happened to her. Not an ending or a failure, but a necessary passage to a world where she could finally see herself clearly, where her strength was not just endured, but celebrated, where difference became not a barrier, but a bridge. The desert wind whispered through juniper branches, carrying the scent of sage and rain-washed earth. Emma closed her eyes, listening. To its ancient voice, to the coyotes calling in the distance, to the quiet breathing of her son through the open window. Different threads, same loom. A pattern emerging, stitch by stitch, day by day, beautiful in its complexity, stronger for its diversity, a weaving that would continue long after this moment had passed into memory. She was home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories. Right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.